Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the November 19th meeting of the Ventura County Planning Commission. We call the meeting to order, and I have an unhappy announcement to make that last week, one of our fellow commissioners, Richard Rodriguez, sadly died. It's a very sad story for us. And today we will take some time to honor and remember him. At the beginning of the meeting, we'll have a moment of silence after the roll call and before the Pledge of Allegiance. And at the end of the meeting, we'll take some time for commissioners and staff to express their remembrances of Richard and their stories if they wish to make some. Will you please call the roll?
Here we go. Chair White,
Here.
Commissioner Dukas,
Here.
Commissioner McPhail,
Here.
Commissioner King,
Here.
and Commissioner Rodriguez.
Thank you. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is the time for reaching out for public comments. If we can put up on the screen and please read, if you will, the access email for people who wish to submit comments, either comments not on the agenda or items on the agenda. Go ahead, please, and read that.
Welcome to the November 19th, 2020 Planning Commission hearing. If you wish to make a comment on a specific case, please mail your comments of 250 words or less to planningpccomments@ventura.org. So that's PLANNING@ventura.org. Please indicate your item line. Item number 4 will be set aside for public comments not listed on our agenda. Item number 7 is for case PL 190040. Staff will read your comments to the Planning Commission, and any comments received after the agenda item will be made part of the record if received prior to the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Do we have any public comments that have come in so far? Okay, so let's move on. Item 5 is approval of minutes for the meeting of October 15th.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Chair White,
Aye.
Commissioner Dukas,
Aye.
Commissioner McPhail,
Aye.
Commissioner King.
Aye.
And approved 4-0.
Okay, item 6, approval of the minutes for November 5th. Do we have a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion for approval and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair White,
Aye.
Commissioner Dukas, Commissioner Fail,
Aye.
Commissioner King.
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
Okay, next item on the agenda, item 7, is case number PL 19-0040. And before we get into this and have the staff presentation, I'm going to read the disclosure notes so that commissioners are able to question staff or the applicant. At this time, I would like to ask each planning commissioner to state on the record whether or not he or she has received any oral or written ex parte communication regarding this agenda item that is not already contained in the record before us on this matter. Please disclose the substance of that information only if that information is not contained in the record before us on this matter. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair White,
I do have a disclosure. Prior to our last meeting, when we considered this application, I drove to La Conchita and drove to the north side of the freeway on the frontage road and observed an existing antenna that's apparently associated with the oil platform, the oil island, I should say, and observed Southern California Edison pole. And I also drove into the Muscle Shoals area and observed the location of the existing facilities.
thank you. Commissioner Dukas?
Yes, in addition to those disclosures that I made at the last meeting, I have another disclosure that I just noticed an equipment vault that's associated with a wireless telecommunications facility in Thousand Oaks has a fan in it that is very loud and that can be heard over the freeway, the 23 freeway, despite the very tall sound wall there. And what I've done is I've emailed it to the director and everybody that I had an email for, including PC comments at ventura.org. But my observation was that although it wasn't specifically a generator that made noise, it's a cooling fan, and it's surprisingly noisy. And that was one of the things that was brought up in comments by the public on the Muscle Shoals project.
Thank you. Commissioner McPhail?
No disclosures.
Commissioner King?
Still no disclosures.
Thank you.
Okay, then I guess we're ready for the staff presentation. The case planner is Thomas Chaffee. So take it away, Thomas.
Good morning, Chair White and members of the Planning Commission.
Oh, here,
The green light's on.
try that one.
Good morning, Chair White, members of the commission.
Hmm.
Yeah, my light's on here.
Yeah. Commissioner Dukas, can you hear Thomas when he's speaking, please? Can you say hello?
Good morning, Chair
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
White. All right. Good morning, Chair White, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Thomas Chaffee, and I'm the case planner on the project before you today. The project is an appeal of the Planning Director's decision to grant a CUP to AT&T for the construction of a wireless communication facility in the community of Muscle Shoals. This is a continued hearing from the July 30th, 2020 Planning Commission appeal hearing in which he directed staff to come back with additional information, which we are here today to present. As a reminder, for those who are watching from home, Planning Commission public comments of 250 words or less can be submitted to planning.pccomments@ventura.org with subject line indicating agenda item number 7. This is a brief reminder of the proposed project. The zoning for this subject location is coastal open space, 10-acre minimum lot size. The general plan designation is open space. North of the facility is the 101 freeway, and south of the proposed location is the community of Muscle Shoals. The site location is between the 101 freeway and Old Pacific Coast Highway within the community of Muscle Shoals. The site is currently developed with an existing Southern California Edison utility pole. In order to approve the proposed facility, the applicant needs to show a gap in service coverage. The first map shows the existing AT&T coverage in the vicinity, and the second map shows the coverage once the proposed facility is on air. The green on the map indicates good coverage, the yellow indicates fair coverage, the pink shows marginal coverage, and the white shows unreliable coverage. The facility would include the replacement of an existing 28-foot tall 6-inch utility pole with a new 34-foot tall utility pole in the same location. Attached to the utility pole would be 4 6-foot tall antennas on 8-foot crossarms. 4 remote radio units and 4 tower-mounted amplifiers would be mounted behind the antennas. The associated equipment cabinets would be located within a 96 square foot lease area near the base of the utility pole. According to the development standards for wireless communication facilities in the coastal zone public right-of-way, a wireless communication facility shall be designed as a stealth facility. The preferred type of facility is one located on an existing structure. Shown is an example adopted and provided with the coastal zoning ordinance of a preferred design of wireless communication facility in the coastal zone. Sorry about that. Shown is an example adopted and provided with the coastal zoning ordinance of a preferred design of a wireless communication facility in the coastal zone. The applicant used the example in the picture to design the current proposed facility. This is a review of the Planning Commission direction from the July 30th hearing. This project comes to your commission as a continued appeal from the Planning Commission hearing on July 30th, 2020. Your commission directed the Planning Division to look at additional alternate sites, take into consideration the public and Planning Commission comments, have additional applicant and neighbor engagement, and to correct the site plans for the updated proposal. Shown is a picture of the updated alternate site analysis. It shows that AT&T had researched 8 alternate sites for the proposed project. These sites include the Verizon co-location to the north. This location would not be able to propagate the signal east of Muscle Shoals and fill the significant gap in coverage. The bluff top. The elevation is too high to close the gap in service coverage, so this was unviable. Caltrans Park and Ride location. This signal cannot propagate to the west of Muscle Shoals, so it is also inviable. Cliff House Inn. The property owner was not interested in a lease with AT&T. The existing oil pier. The State Lands Commission recently retook ownership of this location and will not entertain a new tenant. And the existing T-Mobile facility. Due to state GEO 95 clearance restrictions, this pole is not viable for co-location. The new alternate locations since the last hearing are The existing railroad relay. The small railroad relay is not viable for co-location, and the railroad does not allow cell towers. The wood utility pole to the north, this is located in Caltrans non-right-of-way. Caltrans will not allow a new facility in this area. Oh, go back one. And then to the north of the 101 freeway there is Caltrans non-right-of-way property. All property north of the 101 freeway is owned by Caltrans, and they will not allow use of the land due to sensitive habitat.
Thomas, may I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
It seems like this whole issue turns on, is there a better location for this antenna? And I think as I expressed in the last meeting, it seems like the property across the street, across the freeway, is the logical alternative. And you just stated that Caltrans will not allow a cell tower. Does Caltrans allow cell towers anywhere in the state of California on their property?
Yes, on their right-of-way property. That is what it is designated for, is the conveyance of utilities. So they do allow it in Caltrans right-of-way.
And what about in non-right-of-way properties?
It depends on the location. We spoke with a representative, her name is Barbara Lynn, with Caltrans, and she did confirm that the 4 assessor parcel numbers across the freeway were not viable for wireless location.
Because?
Because of sensitive habitat, and she also mentioned archaeological issues with it as well.
Okay, let's go back to my question. Does Caltrans anywhere in the state of California allow cell towers on non-right-of-way property?
As far as I'm concerned, yes, they do.
They do, okay.
Yes.
And so the issue then turns on sensitive habitat and archaeological resources?
Yes, that is correct.
And did anybody do an analysis of archaeological resources and sensitive habitat on those properties?
That I'm not sure of. I know that the applicant had reached out to Caltrans as a property owner, and they were not willing to allow him to use those APNs. We didn't dig in any further if Caltrans had done any studies on that location. We kind of took their word for it that they're not going to allow the use of that location. And we did get that in email as well.
And let me ask a question about ESHA. We're very familiar with ESHA, having run ESHA through the Planning Commission here previously. Does the County of Ventura allow for any kind of construction in ESHA areas?
Ooh, that I am not 100% sure of. I do know if you're going to be disturbing ESHA, it requires the biologist to go out and review it to see if there's any impacts. If they determine that there may be impacts, they can either condition the project or provide mitigation measures to make sure that that impact is rectified or reduced as much as it can be.
And has that review taken place?
Yes, in the original location with the original proposed equipment shelter, the biologist did review the location. I actually brought back leaves from the salt brush that's located there. She determined that it is ESHA. It is significant habitat. And she, at that time, was going to condition the project to make sure that the ESHA survives for a period of at least 10 years. And if it didn't, then there would have to be mitigation measures that would be enforced.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear in my question. Across the street in the Caltrans non-right-of-way property, did anybody do an ESHA review?
Chair White, Commissioners, let me help answer that. We would not have assessed a different site than the application before us, so no, we have not assessed biological or archaeological resources on an alternative site.
I would just point out that this issue turns on ESHA and archaeological surveys.
Chair White, the application before you, though, is for the site that they're requesting, and the alternative sites as far as wireless cellular services, that's part of the alternatives analysis. So before your commission would be, if the site is not appropriate from the commission's determination, then it's the application before you, and then the applicant would need to determine if they would seek another location and apply separately.
Okay, the applicant has stated, and I'm sure Thomas will say this, and the applicant will too, that the site across the freeway is unsuitable because of ASHA and archaeological resources. But what I'm hearing is that the county has not done any kind of review of this itself. So I would conclude that the county does not necessarily agree with that contention. Is that correct?
Chair White, this is Mindy Fogg with Planning Division. I'm not sure, I didn't catch what you meant by does the county agree or not agree, but the county would not support a proposal across the street in the Caltrans area because we are required to go with the preferred stealth location, which is proposed here on an existing pole in a disturbed and having the equipment in a disturbed area.
Well, I'll let you continue, but I think this is the real issue that the applicant maintains that the Coastal Commission and the county won't allow them to put a tower in the Caltrans right away or non-right away, and yet the county has not confirmed that there's a problem.
And just,
And-
sorry to interrupt, just a little clarification on that. AT&T did reach out to Caltrans for those locations multiple times, and they were shot down. Caltrans wouldn't even allow them as a viable option to use that property. So their first option would have to have a willing landlord, and Caltrans was not willing to lease that land to them.
Based on the argument on ASHA and archaeological, correct?
That is correct, yep.
Okay, but, okay, I may make the point that it doesn't seem like anybody's really checked this out. Commissioner McPhail
White?
has a comment.
I beg to differ with the chair because it's Caltrans' decision, not the county's decision. And if Caltrans says no, because of those issues, that's the way it is. The county has no responsibility to go out there and do their own research without approval from Caltrans. And I think that's what needs to be understood.
Okay, further point on that, question, who enforces ASHA in Ventura County?
Chair White, Commissioners, the county in response to a permit application or a violation.
Okay, so it's the county who enforces ASHA.
Correct, through either a development proposal and an application and processing it for consistency with the policy, or a known violation and following up on response to a violation that impacted ESHA.
Okay, so just I want to counter what Commissioner McPhail just said. The county does have a hand in this. Go ahead, Thomas.
Chair White?
Yeah, I can't see hands flying out there in Ethernet, but go ahead.
Okay. I thought you could see. I guess this question is directed to Mindy Fogg, who said that this is an existing pole. How is it an existing pole when this appears to be a new pole relocated?
Commissioner Dukas, the Southern California Edison pole that's there now is what is proposed to be replaced with the replacement pole for the, for this project.
It seems to me it's a new pole.
Planning Commission direction number 2 was to consider all public and Planning Commission comments. Staff reviewed all the comments from July 30th and identified the topics on this slide, which include the alternate site analysis, the height of the proposed replacement pole, aesthetics, trenching, noise, impacts to ESHA, and potential health effects. The first topic regarding alternate sites we have just covered, so I will go into the other topics. There seemed to be confusion about the height of the proposed replacement pole. Planning has confirmed that the proposal has always been 34 feet above ground level. The total pole length is 40 feet, but 6 of this feet is located below ground.
May I point something out,
Yes.
Chair White?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, you have the floor.
I just want to note that it's a proposed replacement pole. Replacement would imply it's new. Thank you.
Staff received a number of comments regarding aesthetics of the proposed facility. Staff has determined that replacement of the existing Southern California Edison utility pole is the least intrusive design and meets all county ordinances. During adoption of the wireless ordinance, the California Coastal Commission directed the county to limit the number of new structures within the coastal zone. The design of the proposed facility meets the stealth design and preferred location criteria. In addition, the proposed landscaping will screen views of the ground-mounted equipment from public viewpoints. There were also concerns raised about trenching associated with the project development that would impact the existing bike path. Staff confirmed no trenching or disturbance of the bike path is proposed with this project. In addition, we verified that the proposed trenching would not interfere with any existing utilities. The applicant is proposing minimal trenching, but it will be conducted entirely within the Caltrans right-of-way. There were questions raised regarding noise impacts. In relation to noise, staff has confirmed that no generators are proposed with the project and no adverse noise impacts would occur. Numerous comments were received regarding potential impacts to environmentally sensitive habitat. The original proposed design would have required the trimming of native saltbrush located in the right-of-way. The new equipment location is located entirely within the disturbed area, and the county biologist determined there would be no adverse impact to ESHA. The proposed landscaping surrounding the equipment will use native plants and improve the biological value of the site. Finally, there were concerns raised regarding potential health effects from the proposed facility. It is important to note here that the Federal Communications Commission is the agency responsible for regulating radio frequency emissions coming from all wireless sites. The applicant has provided a radio frequency site compliance report, and the site would operate in compliance with the FCC rules and regulations at all times.
Thomas, on that point, in the information submitted to the commission yesterday evening, from, I believe, some residents in Muscle Shoals, the Johnsons, I believe, attaching a big 300 plus pages of legal documents that I skimmed through, and I understood, and maybe we could get a confirmation from county council, that I understand that FCC is the determinant for what constitutes safety when we're talking about these kind of facilities, and that they issued, I believe, if I'm correct, 1996 or so, standards on what constitutes public safety, and that if if a wireless facility was lower than those standards, was deemed to be safe. Now, the documentation provided to us last night indicated that the FCC has been taken to court over this issue and that there is active litigation on the issue of the FCC's determination of safety. Could we get a confirmation? I understand that we're not allowed to cite safety as a reason to deny a permit for a wireless facility, but just out of curiosity and interest, do we know whether this is being litigated?
I don't know whether it's been litigated, but even if it is, that doesn't matter. We would need a court ruling overturning the FCC's preemption in this field, and I know that hasn't happened yet.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, please continue, Thomas.
The Planning Commission directed county to have additional applicant and neighbor engagement. On October 2nd, a site meeting was held with the appellant and applicant at the project site. In response to the meeting, the applicant was able to reduce the length of the proposed cross arms and has revised the landscape plan to screen the proposed ground-mounted equipment. On October 20th, a community meeting was held on Zoom that included staff, the applicant, the appellant, and the concerned neighbors. Input from the community included many of the concerns neighbors raised at the previous hearing, and we have gone over in this presentation. The overall consensus was that the community members do not want another wireless facility located in the neighborhood near their homes. Planning Commission direction number 4 was to bring back the correct site plans for the updated proposal. The latest proposal includes the reduced length cross arms and additional landscaping. The updated site plans and photo simulations are included as exhibits to the staff report. In addition, the applicant has stated that feasible changes can still be made per direction from your commission with changes to the conditions of approval. This is the updated photo simulation of the proposed project looking north with the reduced cross arms. Did that skip one? There we go. Here's the updated photo simulation of the proposed project looking south with the equipment area and proposed landscaping. With the granting of a conditional use permit, the proposed development will be consistent with the coastal area plan and the coastal zoning ordinance. Staff recommends that your commission certify that you have reviewed the staff report and all comments received, approve the conditional use permit, and deny the appeal. Again, as a reminder for those who are watching from home, Planning Commission public comments of 250 words or less can be submitted to planning.pccomments@ventura.org with subject line indicating agenda item number 7. I'm available for any questions you may have in relation to the proposed project. In addition, the appellant is available on Zoom to give a presentation. Thank you.
Do any commissioners have questions of Mr. Chaffee? I do have one question. Again, I think I expected that we would be presented today with an alternatives analysis that would show that the property across the freeway was a good location physically for cell service. In my mind, it is, because you can stand there and look up the freeway to Rincon Point, and you can look down the freeway for miles. Did anybody from county staff go out there and take a look at the property across the freeway?
When we receive projects, I do a site visit. This one I actually went out to multiple times, and I do look for all alternate sites, in my opinion, that would work. When I went out there, I did look across the freeway. The problem I saw with that is due to fire department clearance issues. When you build a new cell tower in the middle of ecological habitat like that, they require brush clearance. So not only would it need to be a stealth facility, probably disguised as a fake tree, they would need landscaping requirements to plant additional trees to disguise the tower. And then the fire department would require brush clearance and the removal of significant amounts of ESHA. So I didn't personally go on to that location and look throughout the whole Caltrans non-right-of-way site. I did look at that location and decided that that was not a preferred location. And in order to meet the coastal zoning ordinance, it would have required significant amount of removal of ESHA. And then without having a viable property owner to allow us to use the property, that was kind of the end of my, end of my looking at that location.
Okay, are you aware that Southern California Edison has a line of utility poles across that property?
I am aware when I looked out over there, there were a couple utility poles with lines on them going across the way. I did see that, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Not seeing any waving hands, so we understand the applicant has a presentation. Is that coming to us or not?
Chair White, the applicant is here and available to answer questions, and the appellant has a presentation.
Okay, well, we haven't started the public hearing yet. We're still in what I would call the staff presentation. So I would be happy to have the applicant present if they want to.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Jerry Ambrose here on behalf of AT&T. I do not have a formal presentation. I would like to address a couple of items, though. I wanted to reiterate the comments and questions about the land across the freeway. We obviously did look at that, and from our perspective, whether or not the property works for AT&T's network or not is really irrelevant when we have a landowner, Caltrans, who told us no. Like any landlord, we reached out to them, asked them if their property was available to us. Are you willing to lease it to us? And they said no. And we have that in writing, so we have to move on from that location.
May I ask you a question? This Chair White, who did you talk to at Caltrans? And when did you talk to them?
There are two people. There's a Daniel Hing and a Barbara Lynn. Barbara Lynn, I got email confirmation from her in October. And Daniel Hing, I had talked to, 6-7 years ago when another company was trying to locate in that area. And Barbara just reiterated or confirmed that those properties are not available to us.
Okay, and we were told in the staff report by Mr. Chaffee that the reason that Caltrans said no was because of ESHA and archaeological concerns. Were you told that? Did she tell you that?
Yeah, it had to do with environmentally sensitive area. And again, as a lessee or as we don't have any ability to force Caltrans to say yes or force them to do to prove why they won't allow us there. Just like any property owner, like the hotel there, we approach them, they say, no, we don't want you here. We don't dig deeper and say, well, prove to us why you don't want us here. Or we have no ability to force a property owner to go beyond saying no.
Understood. From our perspective, however, we hear from you and continuing from Caltrans saying no because of environmentally sensitive habitat. We just had the planning director tell us that it's the county that can make the determination on whether you can modify ESHA properties. Was the Caltrans person aware that the county in fact has the ability to approve something in an ESHA area?
I did, again, I did not go, or we did not go to that level. When they tell us no, we don't say, hey, by the way, you don't have any control over your own land. The county actually controls the ESHA. That's not in our, again, we can't force that issue on them.
But you understand that the county is in charge of that?
I understand from the comments today that the county is generally in charge of that. I don't know what that means when you're dealing with a private, Caltrans is a private landowner in this case. So I don't know how that relates to what we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Just a couple of other comments. There was a comment about a site in Thousand Oaks, I guess that AT&T or Carrier has, and there was an issue about a fan noise. I don't know if that's an apples to apples comparison because AT&T has a number of different installations. Generally in areas where it gets really hot, like Thousand Oaks, they would have a small shelter building that would have an AC unit attached to it. Because in the summer, obviously it gets up, around 100 or so. So that AC unit would probably be running all the time during the hot days or hot periods. So there was an issue about the utility pole. Unlike we're replacing the pole, but it's a utility pole. It's not like a regular, like a private property pole. So Edison could go in there by right without permission and change that pole out to 34 feet. In this case, our project is triggering that replacement. So I just wanted to clarify that we're dealing with a utility pole, not just like a typical pole on private property. And I believe that was it. I'm here to answer any additional questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of
Yes, I have a question.
Commissioner Dukas?
Thank you, and I'm sorry, Mr. Ambrose, that I didn't, I wasn't able to contact you with the video I have of this equipment. And I understand that it might not be apples to apples because it's an old installation. But I thought it was interesting that it wasn't a generator that was making the noise. Also, since I noticed this back, after our last meeting in July, we've had several cool evenings, and it appears that the fan really doesn't have anything to do at all with the outside temperature. Thousand Oaks gets quite cool in the evening, and I would guess that it was probably 65 the evening in August that I recorded it. I'm wondering, Mr. Ward or Ms. Fogg, if we could play that, and maybe Mr. Ambrose could tell us what it is. I just found that it was peculiarly specific to say there's no noise associated with this proposed site because there will be no generator. That's a cue that this narrow little definition, there won't be noise because we won't have a generator. Well, obviously there is noise. And whether or not it's significant, I don't know because it hasn't been looked at. This was just something that caught my attention. And I've walked past this installation dozens of times since then. And it's just interesting. I was wondering if we could do that shared screen, if you had a chance to cue that up. And again, I'm sorry for this being last minute, and I completely forgot about it until last night.
So can we get
Yeah,
that
I
PowerPoint?
probably have to have, well, we can watch the video and I'll talk after that.
Okay, so let me see how best to do this. Everyone on Zoom, if you can mute yourself and just have my device on volume. Cross our fingers.
Well,
Okay, go ahead.
Boy, that's a mystery. That does not look like, I can tell that there's an SCE meter pedestal on the left, like the green smaller box. I don't know what that green, it looks like an Edison transformer, honestly. But I don't know, or it's a cap maybe to a vault, like the equipment's underground. And that might be the cap that vents the underground equipment.
the
Can't tell.
the video didn't play. I couldn't hear a single sound. It was completely silent when
I'm talking about the physical appearance of it.
no.
I can't tell what that is.
We were able to hear the sound of the fan here at the government center.
Okay, well, suffice it to say, it is associated with the antenna because I'm sorry that the video isn't better, but it is AT&T equipment, and it's just how about that?
Yeah, my guess is it's a cover to a vault. My guess is AT&T's equipment is underground, and that is a vent or a ventilation for the underground equipment. That's what it looks like. Best I can tell. I have to do more research, of course.
Well, thank you. Also, regarding the observation that someone made that is in our packet, it's their testimony that they spoke to people about work in the bike path, and that they said it was for your installation. And also my observation when I visited the site, that it even says AT&T on the bike path.
Correct.
What is your response?
So, the term AT&T consists of two entities. One is AT&T Mobility, which deals with the cell sites and wireless. The other part of AT&T is the traditional phone company. For those of us who remember, you have a landline phone and you pay your monthly bill to the phone company. Well, that phone company, it still exists, and they do all of the wireline installations. In the old days, they would run copper underground. Now they run fiber optic cables. And that they have a state franchise right, and they're essentially a public utility, that side of the company. So they run fiber all up and down. They provide service. It's a service for businesses and for homes.
I just find it an unfortunate coincidence that the testimony that we have from neighbors says that it's associated with your project. And
Well, T-Mobile has an AT&T equipment box there, which means they would be using that AT&T wireline service as a fiber optic backhaul for their cell site. So AT&T already has fiber optics running in that area.
this was new trenching. That's my observation, and that's the testimony from people who commented on this, and that I find credible. Also, one last thing, you said that the utility pole, that project is triggering, your project is triggering the replacement. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Commissioner King, your hand is up. I see you.
Thank you. Mr. Ambrose, just a few questions. My first question, it occurred to me, well, actually last night when I was reading comments from the neighbors. Does your cell site connect to a telephone fiber line in the area?
Yes, correct.
Would it be the AT&T fiber
Yes.
line directly adjacent?
Correct.
So it's very possible that stub out of fiber could have actually been in anticipation of your connection, although it may have been generated from the telecom side. Is that?
It's possible. It's possible.
Okay.
But again, that's a separate. It literally is a separate.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
Okay. My second question is, you're going from a 40 square foot footprint under the initial proposal for your equipment on the ground to a 96 square foot footprint for your equipment on the ground. How much of that additional 56 square feet is because of the landscape screening around the equipment?
A couple of things. So the original 40 square feet did not include a battery cabinet. The backup power source for that initial installation would have been bringing in a temporary backup generator. The new location, to get rid of the generator option, we've added a battery cabinet into the lease area. And so that adds additional lease area. Also in the original application, there was no boundary around, there was no fencing or any landscaping, anything around the equipment. So there was some additional concrete pad in front of the equipment area. That was just pad area, and that pad area will remain in the new. And so in the new calculation, we're including the concrete pad and the battery cabinet, as well as the original equipment.
Okay, well then, following up on that question, are people using the area where you propose to put your equipment now? Are people using that for parking now?
No.
Okay.
It's an ice plant. Primarily, it's ice plant.
Okay. And lastly, just my curiosity, what allowed you or enabled you to go with shorter arms up on the pole to hang your equipment off of? So they're quite a bit shorter than your original proposal.
Yeah, the engineers, the RF engineers, prefer as much separation as possible for a perfect function of the facility. The minimum clearance they need between the antennas is 6 feet. That's an absolute minimum. They don't like that, but they'll take it. So what we reduced it down to the 6 foot minimum between the antennas, which gives you an 8 foot arm.
Okay, well, I mean, I was curious because as a RF ham guy, I'm aware that that separation can make all the difference in terms of signal quality. So I wondered if
Correct, because
you
they
offered,
interfere with each other. The
right,
frequencies will interfere if they're too close, and 6 feet's the absolute minimum. They can be,
okay. And just, you know, a couple comments and I'll make them later too. That fan issue clearly is an issue, and I appreciate Commissioner Adukas, you know, making a record of that. I have to tell you, it doesn't sound like most fans. It does sound like a bearing going south, seriously going south. And so when we deliberate, I may raise the issue of maybe a condition on the maintenance of you know, equipment to deal with any noise issues. But, you know, just something that I will mention later. And I guess that's all the questions I have.
Okay, any other questions from commissioners? I have an additional question, and I guess I should have brought it up earlier. Is it possible to put up the alternative sites map again so that we can talk about it? And this will be a question for the applicant since he's the one who, okay, now, what is shown on that map across the freeway is called Caltrans non-ROW right-of-way. And within a white boundary, and there's a peninsula of land coming into the center of that from the La Conchita area, which is apparently private land. Is that correct?
correct. There's a sliver of private land through there.
And did you approach the owner of that private land?
No,
Why not?
it's too high up,
No,
on the hill.
I'm not talking about the bluff. If you see
No, I know, I
the
understand.
sliver of land extending out from
Yes.
the area of La Conchita, there's like a
Correct.
finger of land. Do you see
Correct.
that? Did you approach the owner?
Yeah, it's high. No, it's high up the hill.
No, it's not. I'm not talking about the bluff top. It is not high up on the hill. It is not at all. Do you
No, I
have a
understand
pointer?
the sliver on the north, kind of like northwest, I guess you would say.
So we have there, that sliver right there. So do you see that?
Yes, I see that, correct.
Did you approach the owner of that property?
No, we did not, no.
Okay, because in my mind, just as the Caltrans property is a viable place physically, so is that property. And it would seem like in a complete alternatives analysis, you would have looked at that and approached them, but you did not.
We did not because again, I know it doesn't make sense from when you're looking at it, but it's too far up the hill. You're going to get blockage from that hill that comes down below the bluff. From an engineering standpoint.
Do you analyzed that and said it was blocked?
Engineers analyzed that.
And could you provide that analysis to us?
I could. I don't have it this morning, but I could absolutely provide it for you. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions of staff or the applicant? Hearing none, let's open the public hearing. Do we have any public comments?
We'll have a presentation from the appellant.
Okay, I'm going to call that part of the public hearing. So let's hear from the appellant.
Good morning, Mr. Chair White and Commissioners. Very sorry for the loss of Commissioner Rodriguez. Ray Harmon again, appellant of this project, and I will give a presentation explaining why our community still believes this proposed project should be denied. Next slide. To quickly refresh everyone's memory, the photo on the right is of the pole that is proposed to be replaced with a taller new pole where the 8-foot cross arms and 6-foot antennas would hang. The 101 Old Pacific Coast Highway and the bike path are all public viewing locations. The cross arms are now proposed to be a bit shorter, but these cross arms are still proposed to hang over the gateway entrance to our community. In addition, the area for the equipment is now proposed to be over twice as large from the previous proposal. Next slide. This project is not consistent with numerous visual resources policies from the county's coastal area plan. I discussed these at the last hearing, but I would like to focus your attention to the second policy here, which provides that wireless communication facilities shall be sited and designed to minimize adverse impacts on ESHA and ESHA buffer zones. I requested information and never received it regarding ESHA buffers. And given that this project is proposed 4 feet from ESHA, the equipment area is proposed 4 feet, the project is not consistent with this policy. The third policy requires that development shall be visually compatible with the character of the surrounding area and to restore and enhance visual quality in visually degraded areas. There's already a pole down the road with antennas, and there's rusty equipment cabinets on the ground. There's stickers on it all over it that it's owned by T-Mobile and AT&T. So if this proposed project is approved, we're not restoring and enhancing visual quality of the area, but doing the opposite, adding more equipment and antennas that are visually unappealing. Next slide. Another one of our main appeal issues is regarding biological resources. As discussed in July, Muscle Shoals consists of multiple ESHA areas, including the salt bush, which we've discussed already this morning. Now the equipment area is proposed to be 4 feet away from the salt bush, which is still very close. Multiple species use this entire vegetated area, and there are burrow holes which indicate habitat for small mammals. When Mr. Ambrose, Ms. Fogg, and myself were on the site early last month, we saw multiple cotton-tailed rabbits hopping around and many birds. This general plan bioresources policy on the bottom of the slide states that discretionary development, which could potentially impact biological resources, shall be evaluated by a biologist. I requested even a short bioassessment, and I never saw this. I also never received information, as I mentioned, regarding the ESHA buffers. These buffers usually provide that there should be no new construction within, for example, 50 or 100 feet of ESHA. Next slide. Here's the equipment area proposed to be 4 feet away from the salt bush in the ESHA area. Animals roam and use surrounding areas. They don't know where an official ESHA boundary is, which is why ESHA buffers exist. The proposed equipment area is in this vegetated portion that is also used by multiple species. Next slide. Our community members reviewed the updated alternative site analysis that was provided and found it to be very weak. It lacked a lot of information, including reasons in writing from entities including Caltrans, explaining why the other sites would not work. I requested proof in writing from these agencies from Mr. Ambrose during our meeting on the site on October 2nd. In addition, no RF report was included to show us why the other sites would not work with regard to signal and line of sight. If the analysis included this proposed site as an alternative site, it would note these multiple reasons would deem it unfeasible, including strong neighborhood opposition. It's next to many homes. It's within Esha buffer area next to bioresources. It's right at the entrance to Muscle Shoals, a beach community. And safety concerns. There's electrical equipment and would be in areas where children play. As I mentioned, there's already rusty cabinets that have AT&T stickers on them, and radio frequency health concerns by nearby residents. Next slide. This is an excerpt from the county's ordinance. I want to point out that the staff report says that this proposal would be a stealth antenna, which technically does not require an alternative site analysis. However, the next sentence in the ordinance states that an alternative site analysis may be required to determine the facility is sited in a manner that is most protective of coastal resources. This section goes on to say that the analysis should include demonstrated efforts to secure alternative sites or co-locate the proposed facility, including copies of correspondence sent to other landowners, carriers, or wireless communication facility owners requesting a site lease or co-location. The next section here says that lack of ownership, leases, or permits for other sites shall not suffice as a valid consideration regarding the feasibility of alternate sites unless the applicant demonstrates that substantial efforts were made. Our community believes that substantial efforts were not made. Next slide. Some comments on the staff report. The staff report notes that I made some requests during our meeting with the applicant on October 2nd. I want to clarify for the record that I did not specifically make these requests and then say that this would be satisfactory to the community. What I did do is question why the T-Mobile pole down the road only needs an 8-foot cross arm. To be clear, we're taking the stance that we do not want this facility with new equipment here at all. Next slide. Some additional comments on the staff report. Section C2C of the report explains that the Coastal Commission instructed to limit new construction. So then why is a new 6-foot tall equipment area being considered right next to biohabitat? In addition, we're questioning why this is a stealth antenna. The ordinance provides this photo as an example, but the ordinance does not discuss dimensions or consider locations of concern, such as the entrance to a beach community. The very definition of stealth is intended to avoid detection, intended not to attract attention. Next slide. These are definitions out of the ordinance. There are definitions for wireless communication facility stealth, non-stealth, and prominently visible. After reviewing these definitions, it appears that this proposal falls more so under the definition for non-stealth, which is a facility that is not disguised or concealed, or the definition even more so for prominently visible, which is a facility is considered to be prominently visible if it stands out as an obvious or noticeable feature within its setting when seen from a public viewing area without needing magnifying equipment such as cameras or binoculars. Again, the proposal would be seen from the public bike path, the public road, Old Pacific Coast Highway, and the 101 highway. Next slide. Before I conclude, I would ask Ms. Fogg if you could please pull up the other PowerPoint. I just have a quick point on it. I need to discuss just the first slide on that. Thank you. I was speaking with my neighbor, Mr. Dan Reddick. These are actually his PowerPoint slides that he put together. We were discussing this yesterday, and we were wondering why AT&T does not co-locate on the T-Mobile pole that's down the road. This site already has a concrete pad with equipment, which is labeled AT&T. The equipment is in bad, risky old condition and needs to be replaced anyway. It seems as if this would resolve current issues with safety with the current state of the equipment, and then they wouldn't need a new facility. This location makes more sense given that it's further away from homes, and it's actually quote unquote next to the small industrial area there in our community. It's next to the sewage handling plant. If the argument is made that the pole is too short for more equipment, well, they're already replacing the currently proposed pole anyways with a taller pole, or they could potentially add a second pole in this area right next to the T-Mobile antenna pole. That would make a lot more sense, and it seems that it would solve a lot of issues. So going back to the previous PowerPoint final slide in conclusion. Thank you, Ms. Fogg. So in conclusion, after I appealed the project, the applicant refused to reply to my calls or emails. Only until your commission instructed AT&T to work with the community did they find themselves forced to discuss the project with us. The sense is that AT&T found themselves forced to have a community meeting with us prior to this hearing, made quick minor changes to their project, added a few sentences to their alternative site analysis in order to come back today and be able to say that they have done all that they could, but that this is the only viable site that would work. I also want to remind everyone of the trench work that was done as a coincidence the day after the director's hearing on the trench work on the bike path. Our community respectfully urges that your commission approves the appeal, denies the proposed conditional use permit, and directs the applicant to search for an alternate location and apply for a new permit if they wish to do so. We truly believe that with more effort on AT&T's part, they will be able to find a different location for their proposed project that is not within our community right next to our homes. Thank you for your time, and I can answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Do any commissioners have questions of the appellant? Not seeing any waving hands. Okay, do we have any other public input?
I think we possibly may have one email letter.
Yeah, I have received one email comment if you.
Why don't you go ahead and read that?
All right. I, Robert Bruner, reside at 6640. Can you hear me? Oh, I show that I'm on.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Are we in public comment right now? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I, Robert Bruner, reside at 6640 Old Pacific Coast Highway for over 46 years. Your AT&T cell tower is right in front of my residence, 90 feet from our living space. We are concerned the RF rays from the tower will bounce off the new Caltrans sound wall. Will your equipment, concrete slab that is necessary to run the tower, take away our very few parking spaces? 7 years ago, when the 101 widening project was being constructed, AT&T placed another large box containing various wires, etc., directly in front of the 2 handicap parking spaces adjacent to 6640 Old Pacific Coast Highway. You also recently trenched across Old Pacific Coast Highway to connect your box to the streetlight pole. Were these installed with a permit to do so? Why wasn't our community informed when this box was placed there? You also trenched across the bike path after the second appeal meeting. Was there a permit for this? Thomas Chafee, why is the county continuing this appeal for the cell when the majority of Muscle Shoals does not want it here and want the project denied?
Okay, so that concludes, do you have some more?
Correct. We've got people on Zoom waiting.
Okay, great. Okay, let's bring them in.
Our first speaker is Pam Warden.
Go ahead,
Can you
Pam.
hear me?
Yes.
I do hope. Thank you. I feel, again, I'm like RB. I've been there 47 years, and I feel like we're being disregarded as a neighborhood. I don't understand why you don't value small children and what's being said about it. Especially, again, I know we've referenced this trenching that took place. It's like the day after your hearing, AT&T goes ahead and says, well, we're moving on. It's like we don't have any control of the situation. That's what we feel, that we are totally not able to control our own neighborhood. And we only have 53 houses in the neighborhood, and and our health should be valued. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Next person, please.
Next person is Dennis Longwell.
Dennis?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman White and Planning Commissioners. My name is Dennis Longwell. My wife, Jeanette, and I have lived in the Muscle Shoals community for 13 years. We agree with the concerns already expressed by our neighbors, namely visual impact, biological resources, and a lack of diligence in alternative site analysis. We've learned that the county is not allowed to deny a request by a telecommunications company solely on the grounds of health hazards created by radio frequency radiation. Apparently, the telecommunications companies have used their powerful lobbies to influence the FCC. As a result, the FCC chooses to ignore current research on hazards of RFR and will not allow denial based on health. I invite the commissioners to spend no more than 20 minutes doing a Google search of safety issues related to cell towers. In that 20 minutes, you'll find dozens of current research articles printed in respected scientific journals that outline the negative health consequences of exposure to cell tower emissions. In August of 2019, the journal Frontiers in Public Health published a review article addressing the current scientific evidence on health risks to exposure to RFR. Based on the accumulated evidence, this is a quote, "We recommend that the International Agency for Research on Cancer reevaluate its 2011 classification of the human carcinogenicity of radiofrequency radiation, and the World Health Organization complete a systemic review of multiple other health effects." We've been told by county planning staff that their hands are tied when it comes to consideration of health hazard as a condition of denying a telecommunications project. The Center for Ethics at Harvard University published an article in 2015 entitled "How the Federal Communications Commission is Dominated by the Industries It is Presumably Regulates." Their final recommendation is that cell towers should be distanced from homes, daycare centers, schools, and places frequented by pregnant women, men who want to father healthy children, and the young, unquote. We're in a position here reminiscent of big tobacco in the 1950s. There's plenty of evidence now, and our community doesn't want to find out in 10 years that we've been living under a constant bombardment of damaging radio frequency radiation. One neighbor is literally only 60 feet away from the extending arm of the tower. That arm would be at the same height as their second floor living space, 60 feet away. In addition, with the advent of 5G technology, we were told at our October 20th meeting with county planners that AT&T will not have to go through the same approval process to add 5G to an existing facility once it's approved. That, along with the probability of co-location of additional radio frequency transmitters by other companies at the same site, significantly increases the exposure in our neighborhood. 5G will not replace 4G, it will accompany it for the near future. Switzerland, the Netherlands, parts of Italy, Ireland, and the UK have banned installation or have highly regulated 5G use until further studies are done. Louisiana became the first US state to call for further study on health impacts of 5G, and the town of Encinitas, California, recently banned 5G wireless antennas near schools, daycare centers, and residences. Finally, we asked the commissioners if they would accept the proposed cell tower across the street from their homes. Please approve the appeal before you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Longwell. We appreciate your comments. Next presenter.
Our next presenter is Robert Bruner.
Robert?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having us. You read my letter, so I'm going to make this short. I disagree with your site analysis on that property going across the highway. I talked to the oil guys that worked out there, the manager of the oil facility there, and asked him his lines that run under the freeway over to that box over there, who they leased that property from. And to my surprise, it wasn't Caltrans. It was the Hobson family property. And they also have a line that goes up the hill and a facility up on that hill on the bluffs and back of the Caltrans property. From my understanding, let's go from La Conchita. That's why I disagree with this site analysis. Let's just say La Conchita, then there's a property there. I believe that's Bonzel's property. Then there's that horse ranch. Then there's, I think, a 3-acre property there. Then there's a Hobson family property. And then the Caltrans is more by that terrace bluff there. So I don't think that AT&T did their homework as far as that property across there. They might be able to lease that land from the Hobson Family Trust. And there again, I want to see this project denied. 3 days ago, I saw an osprey on that existing pole that they want to take out. That pole also takes the strain off the pole right there by 6640 because it leans. It's got a guide wire that goes across and it's also anchored to the back. AT&T needs to know that. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Robert. We appreciate your comments. Do we have another one?
Our next speaker is Daniel Reddick.
Mr. Reddick, you have the floor. Daniel. Daniel, are you muted?
Hello, sorry about that. Good morning, Ventura County Board and Chairman White. As expressed earlier by other folks, sorry for your loss. We'd like to also thank you for listening to our comments and concerns here today. I also support what the other folks have said concerning biological resources, community impact, safety, health, and really what's a community, a residential community intended for. In my prior submittals to you, I've talked about the existing T-Mobile site, which in fact, at some level, I mean, there's numerous boxes that are at the T-Mobile site that are in horrific, dangerous conditions. And I really find it amazing after bringing it up over a year ago, back in September, that AT&T hasn't investigated it. They haven't, done anything to remediate it. And, it obviously should be immediately corrected, whether or not they fully own that site or just have some relationship with T-Mobile. As Dennis Longwell said, there's very sufficient evidence and concerns regarding the safety of our F-ways. In addition to that, air and noise pollution. In the event of an extended outage, AT&T will be forced to utilize a trailer-mounted gas or diesel power generator, I know they're going to come back and say, oh no, we have battery packs, and I'm sure they do have battery packs that would accommodate very short outages, but the community here has usually 6 to 8 times a year, we have 8 to 12-hour power outages, sometimes longer than that, in which case the existing cell tower provider has to drag in a generator, so you've got a generator right across your street that's obviously spewing out either diesel or gas fumes. It's also been talked about the visual impact is not consistent with our neighborhood, especially as it would be right at the gateway and the approach to our community. There's been a lot of discussion today, which I support, concerning just the coastal impact, and the environmentally sensitive habitat. As Ray had touched on, though, I yesterday, while looking at the existing facility and in this just horrible condition that it's in, and very obviously noting AT&T's involvement in that, it did spark the discussion about co-location. And, this might be an opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Rip out the existing T-Mobile AT&T site, put in a new one. And this topic of co-location, as I dug into it, is extremely common. AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, all of them very frequently will co-locate on a singular pole. In fact, there's companies out there that specialize in just this process. So although we do not want the facility in our community as maybe there again a way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, we might be able to ask that AT&T approach T-Mobile and jointly together site this installation at the existing facility. Other than that, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And please approve our appeal.
Thank you, Daniel. We appreciate your comments. Do we have more?
I have 2 more speakers.
Excuse me, Chair White. We
Yeah,
have
go
Commissioner
ahead.
Dukas, I believe, has a question.
Okay, go ahead. Commissioner Adukas.
Mr. Reddick, are you still there?
Go ahead, you're recognized.
Yeah, she's up.
Mr. Reddick, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
You mentioned that approximately 6 times a year you have 8 to 12-hour power outages on the regular. Why is that? Unmute.
There we go.
I'm not sure, I can't explain all the power outages. I do know, because we're a coastal community so close to the water, items such as transformers, power lines, and so forth tend to have a much shorter shelf life than you normally would have. And so we frequently have, at least every few months, we've got a transformer that blows up here and they have to be replaced. But what does happen at the existing facility is during these extended outages, a trailer-mounted generator is drug over, and with no fencing around it or anything, it's just put out in the middle of the street, basically, and a cable goes from it over to their facility, and we'll run, just 2 weeks ago, it ran for over 12 hours. So I can't explain the why for, other than I do know it does happen.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. We have 2 more speakers. The next speaker is Todd Coolidge. There we go.
Okay, Todd, you have the floor.
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Good
Yes.
morning, everyone. And first of all, thank you. You guys are doing a great job and really working the due diligence here. This has been a lively discussion, and I think that's what we expect, and we appreciate it. I'm actually new here to this community, so I can tell you, Nora, there's been a ton of power outages that surprise me in this community. Again, I can't speak to why, but we really do see them fairly often. I was going to jump on this. I was going to jump in and talk a little bit about proof points, right? Can you please ask AT&T to prove what they're talking about in each of their comments, if you will? But I think today I won't spend a lot of time on that because we've seen it already, right? Not casting stones at anyone, but I know when Thomas was talking about the sensitive habitat area across the way, one of you asked him, what does he know? And one of his quote unquote comments was, I took their word for it on the right of way in the non-Caltrans area. I think that was a proof that we're not getting all the proof we need. In addition to that, when Jerry was asked who he talked to over there, he mentioned he talked to Dan Heng and Barbara Lynn. And then when one of you pressed him on talking to Dan Heng, it turned out he talked to Dan Heng 6 years ago on another project. I think these are, to my point, areas that I appreciate you guys pressing AT&T on, because it's important that we have the facts and not just what they believe, what they think, or what they want. And so as we go forward in this process, thank you for pressing them on seeing in writing exactly what they're talking about and asking them to literally prove what they're talking about. I do want to finish with what I've heard today. So it sounded like looking at alternative site across the way from, I believe what the county said was, and I think that was Mandy, I'm sorry if I had your name wrong, Mandy, that they must go with a site if they're using a current existing pole. Ms. Adukas pointed out that this is not an existing pole, and we have proved that is a replacement and new pole. Since this is a new pole, then the county has the ability, since their policy now is no longer in place, to look across the freeway to a new site. In addition to that, it sounds like you need to have an application to truly look into the new site. In the conversation today, someone discussed, I think it was Jerry, discussed, or Thomas, we can't go forward because we are looking at the application that's in play today. That's we look at the site we're looking at today. To really look at alternative sites, which is what this whole conversation is all about, I'm asking that you guys press on AT&T, since the county can now look at the alternative site, and since there has been no real look at Sagebrush and the other issues they've run into because a true application had not been put in, that you ask AT&T to truly approve this, move out of this space, and ask them to put in a full application for across the freeway. Let's do the due diligence over there. And since the only way to clearly do that is to have them apply for a new application over there, let's move away from the Muscle Shoals site, move across the way, have them do the due diligence, have that be the conversation until a future time when we find out one way or the other. So thank you. I appreciate the time to talk. I appreciate this community of, although we're small, all of this really matters to us, and coming from bigger communities, once again, thank you for treating us as if we were a county, because everything we're talking about today really does matter to the folks that live here. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Todd. We appreciate your comments. Do we have another?
The last caller I have is Chris Provenzo Chernoff. Okay.
Chris, you have the floor. You're muted. Okay, take it away, Chris. Chris, we're unable to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. Thank you. And I sincerely appreciate the time that you're allowing each of us to speak about this very important issue. I think I'd like to start with talking about parking in our Muscle Shoals community. I think we have basically 3 roads in Muscle Shoals, and those of you who have visited understand how parking is a giant issue here. I'm sure when you visited our community, it wasn't high surf when all the surfers are here looking for a parking spot. At those times, there's double parking, parking in the street, people running up and down the area. It's a very busy place. And we have insufficient parking. So according to AT&T's revised plans, where they plan to move the equipment panel, they're going to change, well, they're going to indicate that the parking should be parallel to Old Pacific Coast Highway. And that wouldn't work for us. We'd probably lose several parking spots. most of the parking is sort of on the angle, not parallel to Old PCH. That's something that would be totally unacceptable to us, and it would cause great problems. Also, I'd like to remind everybody that, yes, we live in a coastal community, but our coastal community is technically a environmentally sensitive zone. So that's of great concern. We have amazing fowls out there. We have the osprey, we have the night heron. The night heron has nests just a couple doors down from me. They come out during the evening, and I've seen them in the trees across the street from me, only during the early evening. That's a habitat for them, and they need that habitat. And also other birds like osprey, I think that was mentioned, and some of them forage in the trees, the existing trees that are adjacent to where the new pole will be. So considering that this is a coastal environmentally sensitive zone, why? I don't understand why we've never received the biologist's biological resource report. I think that's something that's very important. We need to see that. And that's about all I have to say. I just thank you very much for the time.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much. We appreciate your comment. Do we have any other Zoom people or emails that may have come in?
I don't believe so. I don't know how she got in there. So I don't, Commissioner White, I don't have any other registered callers. So
Okay, and no emails have come in?
I will double check, but as of now, I don't have any emails that I've received. No.
Okay, great. Well, in that case, let's close the public hearing.
Okay.
And begin deliberations of the Planning Commission on this matter. Commissioner Dukas, you have your finger up.
I'm making with the finger. I believe that the appellant should have the opportunity to rebut.
Okay, I imagine you're right. Mr. Ambrose, do you have anything to say about these comments?
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to reiterate a few items that came up. There's a lot of discussion about alternatives across the highway, and I understand that. However, even if a property was available, a property owner, Caltrans, said, yes, we will allow you to go here, we would have to build a new tower. And although that might be preferred by the community, a new tower would go against the county's own code in the coastal zone. The code specifically recommends as a higher preference to be co-located on utility poles as we've proposed. Second, there was a lot of discussion about AT&T being in a partnership with T-Mobile. That's not the case. Again, AT&T wireline is a service. It's a fiber optic service that T-Mobile is using for their site. AT&T Mobility, which is our application, is not affiliated with that tower. And I believe that was it. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ambrose. And I guess I'll offer the same opportunity to the appellant. Do you have any rebuttal follow-up comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I was just hoping for a more of a description of what all those AT&T equipment cabinets are there, even if it's used for telephones or whatever it is. I think that more of an effort could be made to co-locate there. Again, there's already an equipment pad on there. AT&T already has some sort of involvement there. They could potentially co-locate. Did they reach out to T-Mobile? Again, overall for the alternative site analysis, it's very weak, and there's a lot more work that could be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now let's begin commissioner deliberations. Would anybody like to speak? I will. I just have to say I'm very disappointed in what we've been presented with today. The county has a major role in the siting of wireless facilities within Ventura County. And it seems like it's not really paying attention to it with the rollout of 5G, and I think Commissioner King could probably quantify what we're going to be dealing with in the near future. The number of antennas is projected to increase substantially over what's out there now because 5G antennas have such a shorter range. I understand that the FCC has taken control over health effects and have dictated what we as a planning commission or the board or the county staff can do. But that set aside, and I respect that we can't do that, the coastal zoning ordinance makes very clear to me that alternatives analysis is a big part of what should happen, what does happen in siting of cell towers. I'm very disappointed in what we've been presented with today by the applicant, and I'm disappointed that the county staff has not addressed its part in this. I expected to see a comprehensive site analysis with documentation over who talked to who when, and if an engineer made a determination that this site or that site doesn't work, that be included and summarized. That's not in there. We've heard that Caltrans won't allow its property to be used because of ESHA and archaeological resources. And yet we've been told by staff that it's the county who's responsible for enforcing ESHA. And my understanding is that the county can make accommodations for development in ESHA in environmentally sensitive habitat areas, certainly with conditions, but that it can happen and it could happen there. I think we need to send this back to be done again, and that we've heard from the applicant they didn't even talk to one of the property owners across the freeway that may be a viable location. I just don't get it. I'm very disappointed. And I think that the county needs to step up and address what happens in the case of development in ESHA. What happens where there are archaeological resources? What are the procedures for an applicant to develop in these properties? I don't think we can just say, oh, we don't need to deal with it. I think the county does need to deal with it. Okay, Commissioner Adukas.
I hope I didn't hear you correctly. I would not be in favor of remanding this back to staff to give Mr. Ambrose and everyone involved with this project another another chance. I feel that it was their burden to demonstrate that this, this project deserves approval. And one of the things that I was very careful to listen for is information about the impact to parking. One of the things I said at the very beginning of disclosures was that I observed how busy the area is, and I went on, I think, a Tuesday in the middle of the day, and parking was a problem. Someone else is coming through. Is my voice coming through, or does someone else hear someone else?
You're doing fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm concerned about the impact of parking because it's already strained, and this is not just any parking. It's parking, at a very popular beach area. I remain very concerned about that, and I think that this has the potential to impact people's ability to utilize that area. One thing that has always bothered me about the way that we approve wireless communications is that we ignore the necessary and logical interconnectedness of these facilities. I thought in the very beginning, in 1996, when I first became aware of the great rollout of wireless telecommunications cell phones, that they're not done one and there's no relationship to the next one and the next one and the next one. It's a network. And I think that this is an example of the inadvisability of treating these like there isn't that interconnectedness. And so to me, it's like a cumulative impact. If you have a network and the only place that will provide coverage in this area is that particular place, I don't think that that is good planning. And that's something that engineers can design for and should design for. And I know Mr. Ambrose is not an RF engineer. I know he works with real estate. And there were a few things that he said, and he has a right to say because he has a First Amendment right to say what he's going to say. But I didn't find what he said credible. I don't find it credible that the pole is an existing pole. It's a replacement pole. Even our planning staff says it's a replacement pole. Words matter. I found this, it was shuffling, talking about that AT&T fiber line connection. Thank you, Mr. King, for that question that explained the mystery of the trenching in the bicycle path. I just find that, disavowal of any connection to this project, I don't find it believable. Another thing I don't find believable is that engineers analyze the unsuitability of the property that's outside of this little enclave of homes. Why would the engineers analyze something that the real estate arm of the company hadn't pursued? I don't find that credible. So there are, I didn't see any proof of wholesale rejection from Caltrans. I understand that substantial efforts were required, but they still weren't provided. And the noise may may not be significant. After all, Thousand Oaks chose to have that installation next to the 23 freeway. I mean, obviously it got approved and it got built, and so it might meet noise standards. But it's just another thing that fills me with disquiet and lack of confidence in being able to make the findings that are necessary to approve this. I don't want it to go back to staff. I think that's unfair to the residents. So I'm not in favor of this project. There are still unanswered questions, and I don't feel that the applicant has met its burden.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner King, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair White, and I appreciate the comments of all of the community. I appreciate the comments of the applicant. I particularly appreciate the comments of my colleagues on the commission. Having said that, unfortunately, I don't entirely agree. First of all, we beat the applicant over the head about the property across the freeway. But the bottom line is property owners have rights, and the property owners, according to the applicant, and we have no actual evidence to the contrary, the folks, Caltrans is not prepared or willing to allow them access in non-right-of-way areas. Now, it happens that the area in the community of Muscle Shoals happens to be in a Caltrans right-of-way, and there are California laws that prevent Caltrans from denying, in this case, AT&T from siting there. And I'm aware of that because I've done these in the city. So I think the across the freeway co-location or location issues in my mind are a red herring. The issue of the noise, that would be a huge issue. And it's a question of sensitive receptors, and there are actually standards and codes that address that. And that happens to be in the city of Thousand Oaks. And if it's as bad as it sounded, and it's anywhere near sensitive receptors like homeowners, then they ought to be calling the city. The city ought to be sending a sound engineer out there and enforce compliance. And if we had the same problem in the county, I assume that we would address it the same way. The issue of, is it a replacement pole or is it a new pole? Might have a point, might not. But to me, it's a red herring. The fact is, there's a pole there. If they have to put one in that's longer, it still accomplishes the same thing. None of that gets around the fact that the neighbors don't want it. They don't want to look at it. They have a lot of fear about what health issues might come up, but we are prevented under current law from considering the health issues. There has to be some other reason. And in my mind, it cannot be so thin that it could be construed as being pretextual. So while I appreciate the sincerity of my colleagues in their arguments, I'm not going to support the appeal. And that's all my comments.
Commissioner McPhail.
Yeah, being last, first of all, I want to say I appreciate my other three colleagues' comments. And I truly do, and I respect the comments of the applicants on this. But Planning Director Ward can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. And I thought I was very clear with what he said. The county will not study ISHA issues unless there's a proposed project on that site. And for Commissioner White to go on and on about county staff, I think is totally inappropriate. The TO site is completely different. And growing up, helping my father with old style air conditioners, I agree with my colleague Commissioner King. They've got a bearing going out, and that fan in the bearing needs to be replaced. Now, if no one's complaining about the noise in TO, that's not anything we have to consider or should be considering at this particular time. Now, Ms. Fogg mentioned that this cell tower will inhibit their scenic views. Now, the scenic view towards the highway is a bike path and a sound barrier wall. So there's no scenic view that way. The tower will not impede anyone's view towards the ocean. So I can't find that as any credible argument. Mr. Longwell stated that why can't they coexist with T-Mobile? Well, if T-Mobile site just down the street a little bit is okay, then in my mind, that throws out all of their arguments about noise, parking, health, everything else, because they've already got a tower there. And if T-Mobile doesn't want to coexist, that's not our concern. It's AT&T wireless concern, not ours. Now, if I had my druthers, I would hope that there's enough business to go around that they could coexist on the same piece of property. And Ms. Provincial Chernoff talked about parking. The only parking that's going to be eliminated is during construction. And that's just being able to move equipment in and move equipment out. They would lose parking if Cal Edison came in to replace any of their poles. So it's a short-term thing. So I don't think parking is a real issue. But what bothers me more than anything is ragging on staff when staff has absolutely no responsibility in this issue as far as what's going on with Caltrans piece of property across the street. I find that incredulous, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, this is Chair White, follow up on my comment about county staff. Because this issue may turn on whether the site across the freeway is a better place to put it, and the applicant saying Caltrans won't let us because of ESHA, and then we know that the county is who enforces ESHA, the county's in a position to enter this conversation and even simply to say these are the procedures for how an applicant can develop property in ESHA, I think would be helpful to this conversation, because it's just a circle here saying, oh, we can't because of ESHA. But the county's in charge of ESHA, but the county won't comment it because it's up to the applicant. We're just run in a circle. any rate, I think that this issue is much bigger than Muscle Shoals. There are going to be hundreds, if not thousands of wireless facilities installed in the county in the upcoming years because of 5G particularly. And I think the county needs to get a handle on it, and I don't see that happening. Commissioner Dukas.
Could I just point out that we have unrebutted testimony that from Robert Bruner saying that he was talking about property across the freeway that's owned by the Hobson Family Trust. That's not Caltrans non-right-of-way. And that's evidence that we have, that's testimony that we have that was not rebutted. So that in conjunction with the other testimony that we had, that the site analysis, even though it wasn't required per our standards, it's something that we requested at the last Planning Commission meeting. And I still feel like they had their chance to do a really good job and convince us that this project should be supported, which I can't make that finding. I'd go ahead and move denial of the application and approval of the appeal based on the fact that that there do appear to be alternative sites that are less impactful, i.e. the land that's owned by the Hobson Family Trust and what other properties that were described by Robert Bruner. Additionally, that sorry, looking through my notes. That we don't have evidence that in writing that Caltrans did reject any kind of installation, that substantial efforts were required to look at alternative sites, but they weren't provided. And that this is a replacement pole and not an existing pole. That's my motion.
I'll second that motion for purposes of discussion. Commissioner McPhail, you have the floor.
I would just add to Commissioner Dukas's statement about the Hobson Family Trust across the street. If I remember correctly, Mr. Ambrose did say that even that site was higher than what they would like to have for as far as engineering goes.
Chair White, Commissioner Dukas, one other clarification to your motion. We do have documentation from Caltrans. Possibly your motion was to be not satisfactory information from Caltrans, but it's not correct to say that we don't have on file communication provided through the applicant as well as with case planner Chafee. So you might want to modify that.
Please strike the section in my motion having to do with lack of proof regarding Caltrans rejection. The rest of it would stand.
Commissioner Dukas?
Is that okay with the seconder of the motion?
Yes, it is. I think the clerk wants a clarification here. Is that correct?
Please, would you mind just restating how you would like this motion put forth?
Sure. I would move to deny the application and approve the appeal based on it not being an existing pole, but that it is a replacement and therefore new pole. And that we have, Mr. Ambrose said that the utility pole, this project was triggering that replacement. So it's a new pole. So it doesn't meet the hierarchy of requirements in our code. Additionally, we requested there be financial, substantial efforts to make a meaningful alternative site analysis, and that was not provided by the applicant. And there appear to be non-Caltrans properties that are not Caltrans non-right-of-way property that is privately owned that perhaps may be suitable, and that the applicant stated he didn't pursue investigating those. At last, I believe there's a necessary and logical relationship between these installations, and that we shouldn't be, maybe this is not part of the motion. I strike that. Also, the impacts to biological resources such as the osprey and the night heron.
Thank you very much.
Is that okay? Do I still have a second?
Is that clear to you, Megan?
Absolutely, I got the whole thing, and I've included the exhibits that were presented today into the record.
Okay, great. Yes, it is acceptable to me. So any discussion on the motion from commissioners? Commissioner McPhail.
I'm going to have to vote no, because one of the problems that I have is I live within a block of high-tension Edison wires, and there's children all over the neighborhood. And if you want to talk about radiation or leaking, think about high-tension wires, not cell towers. So you can shake your head no all you want, Commissioner Dukas, it's okay. But I'd also like to remind the chair, on numerous occasions since I've been on the commission, he has stated we should vote whatever the staff recommendation is. And I know on several occasions we haven't done it because there's been projects in his district. But I just want to remind the chair that we've been told over and over again that we should vote just exactly the way the staff has recommended. Not that that's going to make any difference. This whole project hinges on, I don't want another cell tower in my neighborhood, but it's all right to have the one if they can coexist. And I find that kind of not real credible on their part. They had some great arguments, there's no doubt about that. But I think it's NIMBY more than anything else.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner McPhail. Commissioner King, you have anything to say? I'm going to take that as a no. Let me, before you speak, Commissioner Dukas, I do want to respond to Commissioner McPhail's comment. I am a big supporter of county planning staff, and it's true that in general, I do believe that that my vote should generally go with what the county staff has recommended, but not always. And this is an example of where I disagree, and I can't lay it all on the county. I think the applicant has not done a good job in what we asked them to do. We had a meeting on this before and sent it back to the applicant to do a better alternatives analysis. They still didn't do a good job, and I think that's the real problem here. Commissioner Adukas.
I would just like to point out that we are preempted from basing our decision on anything having to do with radio frequency, non-ionizing radiation, and any feared health impacts. We are completely preempted, and that I grew up under power lines. Look at me. There's absolutely nothing that we can base our decision on having to do with that issue. And I just wanted to emphatically state that.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioner input? In that case, let's vote on the motion.
Chair White,
Yes.
Commissioner Dukas,
Yes.
Commissioner McPhail,
No.
Commissioner King. He's muted.
Commissioner King, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. The answer is no.
Okay, so we have a 2-2 vote on that, so the motion does not pass. Are there any other motions that can be made? Commissioner McPhail.
Not that it'll probably go anywhere, but I make a motion to approve staff's recommendation to approve
Second.
CUP.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve staff recommendation. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Let me get that in here. Do we have a second? No? All right. Commissioner,
King seconded.
oh, thank you very much.
Okay, hearing no comments, let's vote on the motion.
Okay. Recommendations. Hold on.
Please call the roll.
Okay, thank you. There we go. Commissioner White,
No.
Commissioner Dukas,
No.
Commissioner McPhail,
Yes.
Commissioner King.
Yes.
Okay, again, we're deadlocked 2-2. The motion does not pass. Are there any other motions can be put on the floor? Commissioner McPhail.
It's obvious that we're going to be 2-2. So we're deadlocked on what to do. So I would like to make a motion to send this back to staff to work with the applicant and the appellant and see if they can really work something out. And if they can't, then I would assume this project is dead in the water. But I would recommend that they try it one more time to work it out. And if they can get the tower low enough on Hobson Family Trust, talk to them, the applicant, talk to them and see what maybe they can work out.
Okay, is there a second for that motion? Is that a second? Commissioner King, is that a second?
No.
Okay, is there a second on the motion? I will second the motion for purposes of discussion. Is there any discussion? Commissioner King.
Yeah, I could be wrong. My understanding is we're taking action on an appeal. We're taking action on an appeal and it fails 2-2, then the appeal fails, but not the project.
Jeff Barnes, County Council. Good question, Commissioner King. I was kind of waiting for someone to ask. Under our county's land use hearing rules, 3 affirmative votes are needed to approve a project. And we have always considered land use appeals to be de novo, which means starting anew. And so when someone appeals a lower authority decision, such as a planning director decision, the county has always interpreted that as wiping the slate clean in terms of the previous project approval. And so this hearing before your planning commission today is basically as though the application was never heard by the planning director. And so what that means is a 2-2 deadlock before your commission is effectively, it's a non-approval, which is the equivalent of a denial. And so the applicant can appeal to the Board of Supervisors to get another de novo appeal hearing before the board, but there would be no project approval if the 2-2 deadlock stands.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner McPhail.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess this is resolved that this won't move forward, and that concludes the matter. Is that the consensus here today? Director Ward, do you agree with that?
Yes, Chair White, the applicant still has the ability to appeal to the board within 10 days.
I would hope that if they do that they do a very complete and documented alternative site analysis, which hasn't happened to date. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda. Report by the planning director on board actions and other matters.
Thank you, Chair White. I can report back to you on recent Board of Supervisor review and approval of the oil and gas ordinance amendments that your commission reviewed back in July. That ordinance amendments to both the coastal and non-coastal ordinances were approved by the board, and that will become effective on December 10th. There was a second item along with that ordinance amendment, which was a staffing request that relates to staffing resources on our oil and gas program, where we were seeking 1 additional FTE for a planner. The board elected to postpone that decision in wanting to understand a little bit more about all of our programs and our work plan, which I'm already going to be going to the board in February of next year to talk about our work efforts. And so that was a delayed decision on that staff resources. As far as your calendar looking forward, we do have items scheduled for December 3rd. This includes a conditional use permit for the Los Angeles Prayer Mountain and the return of an appeal that you heard, but we had the technical difficulties a few hearings ago. That's coming back to you, and that was the one involving a denial of a zone clearance for a shoreline protection device for the Smith family. And then on December 17th, we will be with you to go over a proposed non-coastal zoning ordinance related to landscaping requirements. And that will close out our calendar year, although we do have items set for you in January. On January 14th, we will be bringing to you the Somas Ranch Farm Worker Housing Project. January 14th. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda are items that the planning commissioners may wish to introduce. Do any commissioners have anything they would like to bring up? I would like to bring up one thing. I understand, I know that the commission and the board approved wildlife corridors, and they approved the 2040 general plan updates. And I understand that both of these matters have outstanding litigation. I'm just wondering if we could get a report next time on without delving into secret negotiations, who has done what and why. Because I know we spent a lot of time and agony in discussing this and voting on this at the Planning Commission. So hopefully that can happen next time. That seems, Jeff, does that seem like something we could do?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you right now, there's,
Let's do it next time.
okay, I mean, there's not a whole lot to report, but no, I'd be happy to next time.
Okay, great. Yeah, okay, the final item, as I indicated in the beginning of the meeting, is remembering Richard Rodriguez. And, this is an opportunity for planning commissioners and staff to, if they wish to comment on Richard's life and participation on the Planning Commission. And so that'll be our opportunity to do this. I'll start off by saying that yesterday I put in a phone call to Richard's wife, Topi, who was grateful that I had called, and I expressed my condolences in the sad loss of her husband. Was unexpected, and she commented on the 37 years that she was with him. As you all know, he worked for the sheriff's department, and she commented on his going from sergeant to chief deputy, advancing quite high in the ranks of the sheriff's department. He, as I understand, was a member of the Planning Commission since 2004, I believe. Does that sound right?
Pretty close, 2006, a significant amount of time.
2006, appointed by Supervisor Zaragoza, so 14 years on the council, on the Planning Commission. And Topi remarked that he had told her that when he agreed to be on the Planning Commission, that he made the commitment to be there as long as Supervisor Zaragoza was there. She commented that he was very dedicated to the Planning Commission and spent the time going through the packets provided, the information provided for each hearing that came before him. And she talked about wondering how he could still see after going through some of these packets, and I think we'll all understand that. But she said he is very dedicated to the Planning Commission and to the county, and that he in particular was always concerned about what was best for public safety, and that he was honored, as I think we all are on the commission here, he was honored to have been appointed as a planning commissioner. My personal observation, or one of them, is that I was always amazed that when we were considering land use issues around the county, I don't care where it was in the county, that Richard had been there as a deputy sheriff, and he was very familiar with all these neighborhoods and streets and what was going on. It was wonderful to have his input, and I will certainly miss him. Anybody else care to, Commissioner Dukas?
Thank you for that, Chair White. I just want to point out a couple of things about Richard Rodriguez, our colleague. He was one of two commissioners that I'm aware of that were so good at their job. When the new supervisor came in, they wanted to hold on to the old commissioner. Michael Wessner was one, and Richard Rodriguez was appointed first by John Flynn, the supervisor, and continued on with Zaragoza. And I had every hope that Carmen Ramirez would reappoint Richard and he could go on forever. Because Richard was a gentleman, and he was the walking embodiment of Still Waters Run Deep. Richard had been everywhere and had seen everything. And he still was incredibly kind and empathetic and understanding. I don't know if you ever had a chance to peek over at his notes. He took meticulous notes in beautiful handwriting. Everything that he did was to protect the public safety that was centered to his purpose in life. And in so doing, he made Ventura County a better place to live. And I think we'll all miss him and remember him forever.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner King, you have the floor.
Thank you. I did not know Richard as long as some of you. I only met him when I joined the commission a couple of years ago. But I was lucky to get to sit next to him. And that is a big deal for me because, and most people don't get to see this side of the commission, but you get to know somebody when you sit next to them, and just those little personal conversations before and after a meeting and during breaks. And I always enjoyed those conversations with him, and I always enjoyed how friendly he was. But I found him always prepared for meetings, highly prepared for meetings, extremely respectful of his colleagues and the public and the applicants and the staff. Very empathetic, and that's my greatest learning in the last 2 years. I've worked with great empaths, and he certainly was one. And I also found him very thoughtful. He listened to every argument, and he considered them carefully, and he voted his conscience. So I was shocked to learn of his passing, and I will miss him greatly.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner King. Commissioner McPhail.
Yeah, I first met Richard a long, long time ago when he was with the Sheriff's Department. And I was the Ag Commissioner, and we worked together on several different projects. And as the other three have already said, he was always thoroughly abreast of what the issue was, had studied it, and his thoughts and his comments were always apropos. And when he retired, I kind of lost that in some respects. But when I got appointed to the Planning Commission, I kept looking over there in the corner, kept thinking, Richard Rodriguez. That name sounds so familiar. And after one of the meetings, we were walking out, and I said, did you used to work for the Sheriff's Department? And he goes, yes. He says, I remember you. I'm not sure that was good or bad, but anyway, I'm the newest member on the Planning Commission, and Richard always listened to my questions. during breaks, when we'd go to the parking lot, at lunch, whatever questions I had, he was so interested in answering them and telling me what a commissioner's duty is. And one of the things I will always remember is never be afraid to say what you think, because that's what you're here for. Now, I know sometimes I'm not the most diplomatic person on the commission, and I freely admit that. But Richard had a grace and a temperament that I wish I had, because he was the ultimate gentleman in my book, and he will be missed. And our prayers go out to his wife and his family. And I don't know who will replace Richard, but they're going to have huge shoes to step into. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McPhail. Director Ward, do you have something to say?
Certainly. Thank you for the time. Well, my association with your commission and with Richard has been brief, only a year and a half. It was with sad news to update all of our staff of his passing, and numerous staff expressed their remorse and commented back on their involvement with him through their various projects over the years. So he definitely will be missed. He was a pleasure to work with. We also have RMA Director Pearlhart. I'm not sure if she wants to add anything, but the staff was just really sad on this news, and we've circulated a comment card, of course, a nice sympathy card. Of course, in COVID times, that makes it really challenging for people to express their thoughts, but we will be getting something out to his wife.
Thank you, Director Ward. Ms. Pearlhart, please proceed. You have the floor.
Morning.
Welcome back.
Good morning, Commissioners. It is good to see you again. I wish it was under better circumstances, but it's nice to be here. I do want to thank Commissioner White for inviting me down to speak about my thoughts about Commissioner Rodriguez this morning. I wrote a few things down because I didn't want to forget. So Commissioner Rodriguez and I worked together for 15 years, and that's a long time to get to know somebody. And here's what I know for certain about Richard. He was an honorable, ethical man with a great sense of humor. And that is needed by commissioners, as I can see, by the meeting today. Your role is difficult, and it's time intensive. And so I also want to take this time to thank you for your service. Richard was proud. He was proud of his family. He was proud of his long career with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. He was proud of the beach community that he lived in. And he was very proud of his work as a planning commissioner. He took his work seriously, as we have heard from all of our planning commissioners today. He spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours over 15 years poring over staff reports and technical reviews. He always made sure that public safety was at the forefront of every land use decision. And our staff knew that when Commissioner Rodriguez started his deliberation with, "I am troubled," we were also troubled, right? We were scrambling to find the answer to what was bothering him. Commissioner Rodriguez was a pleasure, just a pleasure to work with. He was always prepared and he was empathetic, and I've heard that by all of you today. He was empathetic to both perspectives, both sides, the applicant side and those speakers who may have disagreed with the project that was in front of them. What I always saw him do was listen to both sides and weigh his vote very, very carefully. I'm going to miss Richard's very calm demeanor, his passion for our county, the sound of his laughter after a particularly long meeting, and there has been some long meetings in this boardroom. He was a public servant to the end. He served his county just exemplary, and I believe that the citizens of Ventura County are very, very lucky to have had Richard as both a planning commissioner and as a deputy chief. I'm sure that Richard could have used those long hours that he spent reviewing all of the staff reports in many other ways, including spending more time with his family. So as a former grateful long-term planning director here, I want to end this morning by thanking his family for the sacrifices in sharing him with the planning department for these last 15 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Prilhart. Any other comments?
If I may,
Yep,
I'd
yeah,
like
please.
to say a few things. I had the great pleasure of working with Commissioner Rodriguez. He sat next to me for several years. I can't remember even where he was at the end, but he might have been sitting there. And it's just like all of you, it's such a shock and terrible surprise to know that he left and he's gone. And I concur with everyone, what everyone else said. He's a true gentleman. He worked so hard. He cared so much for this county. And I think some of my favorite things about Richard were when he had such a wealth of experience about every site that came before the commission. And so either during the disclosures or during the hearings themselves, he would have a story or anecdote about so many sites, and it was just so interesting. He was a living historian, and so he really brought that experience to bear. And probably I thought it was humorous at the time, and maybe he did too in hindsight. But just to give one example, we had an application for a dangerous animal keeping project, a tiger keeping project, very controversial up above the Malibu area. And so when the Planning Commission was considering that item, and it was a full house, really controversial, Richard had this crazy story about how when he was a sheriff, he had to literally track down some tiger that got loose in Thousand Oaks or Newbury Park. It was just, it's like, oh my gosh, this guy has seen it all. And so he was just always had a smile on his face too, and kind words for me. And a few times I saw him at St. Bonnie's football games. I think his grandkids went there, and just seeing him out of this context with his family, just so happy, just obviously a family man, just loving life. He was a great man, and I'm going to miss him so much.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other comments? If not, I will close again by saying, to quote Hopi, that he was dedicated to being a planning commissioner and was honored, as I know I'm honored, and I assume all of us are honored to be members of the Planning Commission and what the Planning Commission does. His death is a reminder of how fragile life is, and that how quickly we can all be snatched away. With that, go ahead, Megan. You have a comment.
I have several things to say.
Thank you.
One, I would like to read a comment that was sent in by a previous planning director.
Can everybody hear?
We have it. This is, Dear Rich, you have completed a lifetime of public service. Count me among the many who are thankful for that service. It's people like you who generously contribute their time and effort that make our society work. Your family stands proud today of your achievements. I know you will read this message because you wouldn't miss a Planning Commission meeting for any reason. Thanks, Brian Baca. I just want to mention, I spent 3 years with Commissioner Rodriguez. As a chair, he was kind and considerate, and always worried about if I was on time and if I needed more time. We talked a lot about Hawaii. We shared a lot of interest about the island of Hawaii. I'll miss those conversations, but he was so dedicated to being the planning commissioner, even in times of pain, or maybe he wasn't feeling well. He still made that effort to come in if he could. He was a wonderful, thoughtful man and a mainstay here. I will miss him greatly, and I just want to mention that I know that Topi Rodriguez knew this was important to Richard because she emailed me early in the morning when Richard had passed, because I think that's what Richard would have wanted. So I will miss him a lot.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Any other comments? Hearing none, without objection, the meeting is adjourned.